calm down a little bit. The martial arts display that we saw, this is even though it's shake, he added some humor to it, but this is a serious affair. May Allah reward the brothers and increase them. As they said the free word, the word that we like to hear, they offer their services for free here in this masjid. So we encourage everyone, young and old, to come and benefit from the arts of defense and learning how to defend yourself. Barakallahu feek. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
How much time is it? 1 hour. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله بلغ الرسالة وأدى الأمانة ونصح الأمة وجاهد في الله تعالى حق الجهاد حتى توفاه الله فصلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه وأزواجه وذرياته والسائرين على منهاجه إلى يوم البعث. Dear brothers and sisters in Islam, when we talk about Tasfiya wa Tarbiyah, cleansing and purging, we talk about wiping away, weeding out, getting rid of that which needs to be gotten rid of, and then filling that void with that which is wholesome, pure, authentic, genuine, and beneficial. Obviously, the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his statements, his actions, what he looked like, how he behaved, his character, what he allowed the companions to do, what he allowed the companions to be like, and how he allowed them to behave, is going to play an integral role in the whole entire concept of that which is bad and that which is good, that which is partially bad and that which is totally bad, that which is partially good and that which is 101% wholesome and good. The hadith of the Prophet ﷺ is going to play an integral role. However, Muhammad, just like any other great man, Muslim or non-Muslim, religious leader, political leader, military leader, thinker, scientist, artist, any great man or great woman, any major part of history, major figure of history, people, they're going to lie upon these individuals, intentionally or unintentionally. Oftentimes they're going to say something about this great man, this great woman, this great thinker, not because they hate them or they hate their message, because they love them and they love their message. However, the human being by nature is forgetful. The human being by nature, except for the people whom Allah Azza wa Jal gives His mercy, oftentimes sloppy. They'll say things, they'll quote things, they'll do things, they'll pass on information by accident, and it's a mistake. Just like a page of a book, you take it to Staples or Office Max, or you have a scanner in your house or your office, and you make a copy, and the first copy is sharp, just like the actual book. And you make a second copy, and a third copy from the original copy, and the fourth and the fifth and the sixth. And eventually the copy begins to fade. It begins to fade. It's not as sharp, it's not as brilliant, it's not as vivid. I.e., whenever something is passed on, handed down, copied, it loses its sharpness. So we're talking about someone who died 300 years ago, 100 years ago, 50 years ago, 500 years ago. Imagine someone who died nearly 1,500 years ago. That's a very long time. So there are going to be people who say things about him, pass on things from him which are incorrect. And it doesn't mean that it's done intentionally. That's another discussion, those who intentionally fabricate and make up things. But people are going to quote Muhammad because they love Muhammad so much. But it's a scanner. And every time the page is scanned and copied, it becomes duller and duller and duller through human nature. So with this being said, anyone of any type of importance in history, there are going to be people that are going to say things about this individual, and there isn't going to be 101% accuracy. There's going to be a percentage of inaccuracy. 20%, 30%, 50%, 80%. So with that being said, at Tasfiya wa Tarbiyah, let's just look at our country. And let's look at our communities. Let's look at our society. And let's look at our culture. What are the evil effects? What are the bad effects of information which is inaccurate? False information, which is of two types. And the same applies to the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, two types. But at the end of the day, it's one. Right wing and left wing of one bird. There's no difference at the end of the day. There is the intentional lie. Someone who lies, they fabricate something, they make up a story. Regardless of their intention, a good intention, a bad intention, what's important, they intentionally lie. Lying on someone or lying on the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then we have someone, as we just said, who has a good intention. They have love, they're honest, they're upright, but they lack the natural, scholastic, voracious nature, and they say something which is inaccurate. At the end of the day, the one who lied intentionally and the one who lied accidentally, the one who told you something that's totally wrong and bogus, at the end of the day, both pieces of information are what? They're false. They don't exist in the real world. So therefore, there's no difference between the intentional lying and unintentional lying. Everybody understand this? If I asked you, what's your name, Akhi? Abdul Hadi. I said, Abdul Hadi, what's the weather outside? And Abdul Hadi, he said, it's snowing. Right now, it's snowing outside. This is just a hypothetical example. Abdul Hadi said it's snowing and he's lying to me. I go outside of the masjid, I open up the door, I find no snow. Now, I asked Brother Ja'far, so what's the weather outside? And you told me, it's hailing outside. It's December, it's cold, it's a little wet, there's hail coming down. I get up, I go outside the masjid, I open up the door, I don't see any hail. I see a little bit of slick concrete from rain. I see no snow, I see no hail. Snow and hail, where do they both exist right now? Are they there? Are they present? He lied intentionally. He lied unintentionally. Al-ikhbar bi khilaf al-waqi'. He said something which was totally wrong and erroneous. So regardless of the intention of Brother Abdul Hadi and Brother Ja'far, their information that they gave me at the end of the day was what? It's false. It's of no value whatsoever. How I deal with Brother Abdul Hadi, how I deal with Ja'far, that's the second story. But the piece of information, the ma'luma, the fact, at the end of the day is totally what? Of no use. It's of what? Everybody understand this? This is a critical point to understand history, let alone the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, is that there are hadiths that are false, that are fake, that are bogus, that were made up intentionally. Hadiths that are false, that are bogus, that were made up what? Unintentionally. Everybody understand this? How does this have an effect upon one's tarbiyah, upon one's cultivation, your mind, your body, your spirit, your life? Where do we start in America? With religion, holidays, culture, customs, history. How many holidays do we have in which we teach our children things, and the figure of the holiday, the date of the holiday, the purpose of the holiday is an absolute lie. There's no Santa Claus, there is no Halloween, Thanksgiving didn't exist on this day, not for this purpose, not for this intention. Spring, we say Easter, and the list goes forward. The religion of most people here today in America is based off of a great deal of what? Lies. Intentional lies or unintentional lies. The crucifixion of Jesus. Was someone crucified? Was someone put on a post on the wood? Was it Isa ibn Maryam? At the end of the day, Jesus did not die on a what? On a cross, according to what we believe as Muslims. So whether they lied and said he died on a cross, or whether there was someone that was placed in his resemblance, at the end of the day, the piece of information is a what? It's erroneous, it's of no value, it's of no benefit. And everything that springs forth from that aqidah is also going to be false and of no use. So look at Christmas. When is Christmas? Omar. What day is Christmas? A Monday, inshallah. Tayyib. We teach our children, if you be good, if you're a good boy, Santa Claus will visit you. He'll come with a sleigh of reindeer. One of them has a very bright red nose. Santa Claus, he comes down through the chimney with a bag of toys. And he'll leave the toy that you wanted under the tree, and you wake up in the morning. That's a lie. Is it a good lie, a bad lie? What's important is that it's totally false. We talk about the history of our country, America. Who discovered America? How do you discover a place in which there are already inhabitants? How does that work? I discovered a place in which people were already living and had a detailed civilization. How did you discover it? That's a long discussion with regards to religious and racial inferiority and superiority. Because we claim to have found it, now it's been discovered. Was Christopher Columbus the first person to discover America? Was it the Chinese? Was it the Vikings from Scandinavia? Was the Turks? Was Muslims from West Africa? Arabs from the Middle East? What's important is the integral fabric of the history of the country is based off of a good deal of what? Of lies. Everybody understand this? وَعَلَى هَذَا فَقِسْ. And you can make so many other examples of inaccurate facts, lies, intentional, unintentional, that are saturated in our culture, politics, and the religion of the people of America. And that has a clear effect on the tarbiyah of the people, what? Of our country. Because it's lies being fed to them, fed to them, fed to them, fed to them. And if it isn't an absolute lie, it's partial. And that has an effect on the what? The upbringing of the child. Politics, warfare, and the list goes forward. What do you live for? What do you die for? What is your purpose? Because we're spreading this, we're fighting this, we're killing this, we're doing away with it. And those things are what? They're lies. So the point I'm trying to get here is that if you have tarbiyah that's based off of lies, that's based off of weak information, inaccurate information, then obviously if you build on soggy ground, then your building will be what? Will be shaky. And this is your deen. If your aqidah is based off of hadith which are fabricated and made up, then that's what your aqidah will be like. Your salah, your hajj, your fasting, your ibadat. If these acts of worship are based off of inaccurate narrations that are attributed to the Prophet ﷺ, then your acts of worship are going to be like that. Your character. When is it to be shy? What is meant by being shy? How should a Muslimah behave and be with her husband? What cannot endure with regards to your spouse? And the list goes on of problems that are found in the practice of Islam because of weak and bogus what? Ahadith. Everybody understand this? Regardless whether the hadith was intentionally made up or unintentionally made up. This is a crucial point to understand. It means no difference. Snow outside, hell outside. Outside there's what? Neither of the two. Abdul Hadi? It makes what? It makes no difference. Everybody understand this or not? So this is crucially important, and it's going to have a profound effect upon the Muslim's deen when it's based off of that which is ghayr sahih. Obviously, there are levels of hadiths which are inauthentic. Some are extremely weak. Some are actually fabricated. Some, the people of knowledge, they differ over them. Some say sahih, some say da'if. They're levels. What's important is for the Muslim to have a pure constitution. The constitution in your head is supposed to be authentic narrations. Every hadith that I realized, I studied, I come across, a secondary. But to make it the default principle is that it's supposed to be what? Authentic information. Everybody understand this? So, most of us, raise your hands if you're a revert Muslim. How many of you accepted Islam? That's it? Everyone raise your hand if you're a revert Muslim. If you were once a Christian or Jew or atheist or a 5%er or Hebrew Israelite or any type of, okay, we would probably say the majority. Everybody understand this? So when you come to Islam and then you start learning and practicing, how do you learn? How do you practice? And if you're a Muslim for 30 years, for 40 years, for 50 years, for 60 years, living in America, especially the East Coast, I'm sure that you've seen many waves and many dawahs and many movements, and they all claim to be pure Islam, true Islam, the correct Islam. Everybody understand this? And if you sit back and if you look at the 90s, the 80s, the 70s, the 60s, early 2000, you'll find from the greatest flaws of these different dawahs and movements and groups is that they base their movement off of inaccurate information. whether it's an intentional lie or whether it's a lie by accident. So it's a very serious and important topic. Everybody understand this or not? Tight. With that being said, from the most famous proponents of the concept of a tasfiya wa tarbiyah of the current age, from the most, we didn't say the most famous, from the most famous of them, without a question, is Sheikh al-Albani, rahimahullah. Sheikh Muhammad Nasr ad-Din al-Albani, the great muhaddith. He was from the most important and integral figures in pushing and pumping and propagating the concept of a tasfiya and tarbiyah, of getting rid of the old, the weak, and refreshing it with the new, authentic information. Obviously, it's not new, but new to us. Raise your hand if you were born Muslim and raised in a Muslim household. Tayyib. Most of the brothers who raise their hands are younger brothers. However, we find someone that's a bit older, that was raised Muslim, his understanding of many issues of Islam, let alone hadith, I guarantee, is going to be very different than your understanding, because he comes from a different generation in which they were fed information. The books that were available, the things that were translated, is like night and day of the modern age. And it has a profound effect upon the tarbiyah. Everybody understand this? So Sheikh al-Albani, rahimahullah ta'ala, since he was from the most famous proponents of this concept, then it only makes sense for him to have and to play a major role in the issue of weak and fabricated hadiths and how they have effect upon the Muslim ummah. The Shaykh rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, من المصائب العظمى التي نزلت بالمسلمين منذ العصور الأولى انتشار الأحاديث الضعيفة والموضوعة بينهم، وقد أدى انتشارها إلى مفاسد كثيرة، منها ما هو من الأمور الاعتقادية الغيبية، ومنها ما هو من الأمور التشريعية. He says, from the major calamities, the great misfortunes that have befallen the Muslims from many centuries ago, from the major misfortunes that have befallen the Muslims, is the spreading of fabricated and weak hadith among them. From the greatest misfortunes that have happened to the Muslim ummah, he says, min al-qurun ula, way back. And he's talking about way back. Do you think he's talking about the Western Hemisphere? He's talking about UK and Canada and America and Central America and South America? No. He's talking about the Middle East. He's talking about North Africa, Central Africa. He's talking about the Far East. He's talking about the heart, the center of the populace of the Muslims. So those people who weren't afflicted with alcohol, with drugs, with pornography, with gang violence, with Christianity, with this, with this, with this, with this, with that, if they have this major calamity that has befallen them on weak hadiths, then what about the Muslims coming from the Western Hemisphere, in which religion and the practice of religion is looked down upon to most people? And even if you are a religious person, being studious is also what? Looked down upon. Someone who wears glasses, they have a negative term for them. They make fun of them. You're a nerd, 4 eyes. All you do is read, you're this and you're that. It's not cool to be studious. It's not cool to be knowledgeable. Everybody understand this? So if that's what happened to them, and they were Muslims, La ilaha Muhammad Rasulullah, who fasted, who prayed, who made the adhan, then what about us? That's only one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it is that Allah Azza wa Jal has virtued many of you brothers, has virtued and favored you, similar to the situation of the Sahaba, who once worshipped other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who once did the crimes and the things that they did until Muhammad came as a light and Allah guided them through him, alayhi salatu wasalam. So many brothers who accept Islam, sometimes it's easier for them to come with the momentum and the speed upon the correct way than someone who's been practicing Islam for centuries. Everybody clear on this or not? What we can agree on is that weak narrations is a major affliction that has befallen the Muslims from a very long time ago. The Shaykh rahimahullah ta'ala, he then says, this spreading of these bogus narrations, it has led to all types of problems, all types of mafasid, harms. Some of them pertain to one's belief system, one's creed, one's iman, the unseen, the attributes of Allah, the unseen, the malaika, the jinn, the angels. Go over an older brother's house. when you use the bathroom, what he'll say to you with regards to the bathroom, the hammam, and go over a younger brother's house who's a Muslim, who's born a Muslim, it's like night and day. How they deal with the concept of jinn, how they deal with the concept of angels, how they deal with the concept of shayateen in the household, in the bathroom. Are we making this up? A reason behind this is what? It's bogus hadiths. If you don't do this, if you don't cover this, if you don't lock this, this will happen and that will happen. And some of the younger brothers, they were never afflicted what? With that problem. He says, and there are other things of problems pertaining to tashri'ah, the legal issues of the deen, the halal and the haram, what you can and cannot do. You can't get married, you can't divorce, you can't eat this, you can't wear this, you can't drink this, you have to cross this out, you have to scratch this out, you have to, you can't, whatever the ruling is of tashri'ah. He says it's a major problem in the laws on a day-to-day basis among the Muslims. وقد اقتضت حكمة العليم الخبير سبحانه وتعالى ألا يدع هذه الأحاديث التي اختلقها المغرضون لغايات شتى تسري بين المسلمين دون أن يخيض لها من يكشف القناع عن حقيقتها ويبين للناس أمرها. أولئك هم أئمة الحديث الشريف وحاملوا ألوية السنة النبوية الذين قاموا ببيان حال أكثر الأحاديث من صحة أو ضعف أو وضع وأصلوا أصولا متينة وقاعدوا قواعد رصينة. من أتقنها أمكنه أن يعلم درجة أي حديث ولو لم ينصوا عليه، وذلك هو علم أصول الحديث أو مصطلح الحديث. ومع ذلك فإننا نرى بعض العلماء والطلاب قد انصرفوا عن قراءة الكتب المذكورة فجهلوا بسبب ذلك حال الأحاديث التي حفظوها عن مشايخهم أو يقرؤونها في بعض الكتب التي لا تتحرى الصحيح الثابت. The Shaykh then says, when we talk about a problem, we talk about a misfortune and a calamity, he says, however, Allah Azza wa Jal, who is Al-Alim Al-Khabir, He's all-knowing, He's all-aware. There isn't someone who's more informed than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There isn't one who knows more than Allah, the inside and the outside. Allah's mercy and His wisdom, it requires is that if He made this problem, allowed this problem, decreed this problem, if He made this sickness, then He also created and made and ordained doctors and physicians for that sickness. He made a way out. He made a solution to this musibah. And that is, He made men and He made women. And He created them with the purpose of exposing and unveiling the reality of these liars, these fabricators, and these inaccurate narrators. He says, لِغَايَةٍ شَتَّى, for all types of purposes. In brief, brothers and sisters, when you take a crash course in the sciences of hadith, you come across that which is called al-hadith al-mawdu', a fabricated hadith. And the fabricators of hadith are of different types. They aren't on one level. There are those who made up hadiths about the Prophet ﷺ for political gain. There are those who made up hadiths about the Prophet ﷺ for gain of spirituality. There are those who made up hadiths against the Prophet ﷺ against races and cultures. Read how many hadiths about the dispraise of Persians. And that when Allah Azza wa Jalla is pleased, He sends down the revelation in Arabic. And when Allah Azza wa Jalla is angry and displeased, He sends down the revelation in Farsi. Go overseas, go to the Prophet ﷺ city, and you'll see how bad the hatred and the rivalry is between Arabs and Persians. How they hate each other. Look how the Afghani brothers look at the Arab brothers. Do you think it's just based off of culture or the battle of Qadisiyah? No, it's because of many of these hadiths. So the Arabs, some of them, they made hadiths dispraising the Persians. And the Persians, they made up hadiths to dispraise the Arabs. Or to make hadiths about the Abyssinians, and the list goes on. Also, there were people who made up hadiths and fabricated hadiths with the purpose of getting money. They were professional storytellers. And you read the pages of history, you read about Baghdad, you walk down the street, and in each and every corner, there was a storyteller. And he would say, give me a golden coin, give me a dinar, give me a dirham. As he said, give me $5, give me $10. You see people, peddlers, on the street. They do card tricks. They do certain things. You give them a little bit of money. There were people who were professional liars. They made up hadith. They told hadith just to get what? Money. Everybody understand this? There were those who made up hadith because they were jealous and they were overzealous. They looked at how the people were turning away from the Quran. They were turning away from the Prophet's way. They saw the people busy themselves with this and with that. So they made up narrations to do what? Bring the people back to the deen. And they said, we're not lying against the Prophet, but we're what? We're lying for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Everybody understand this? So there are different reasons why people made up narrations. Now, these we're talking about in the early classical days, the ancient times. The average Muslim today is so far from the basic teachings of his religion. The average Muslim today is so far from the fundamental perfection of his deen, of the basics of the Arabic language of the Quran. He passes on what he hears. He passes on what? What he hears. The European colonists, when they went to the Muslim lands, the Arab lands, the African lands, they knew facing the Muslims face to face wasn't going to work. Telling the Muslims to disbelieve in Allah wasn't going to work. Telling the Muslims that Islam was fake and false, it wasn't going to work. Islam was deeply penetrated in the threads of their hearts. But they used certain tools and certain tactics. From those tools and from those tactics was to make up hadiths, bogus narrations to embarrass the Prophet, to show how Islam makes no sense. It's contradictory. Look what the Prophet says here, and then he says something like this and like that. So Shaykh Al-Albani rahimahullah ta'ala, he says that these fabricators, they had what? Ghayat shatta, all types of purposes. Don't think it's just what? One intention. He says here, these are ulama of hadith. He says they laid down principles. They made foundations and maxims that were so strong and so powerful as that anyone who masters this science can determine the authenticity of any hadith. He can determine the authenticity of what? Any hadith by learning and mastering this science. The Shaykh rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, and this is what is known as ilm al-hadith, the science of hadith. He says, however, that which is very ironic is that many scholars and many students who learnt these principles, who memorize these hadiths, he says when they talk, when they give a khutbah, when they give a sermon, when they give a lecture, when they write a book, they quote and they cite bogus hadiths. They quote and they cite what? Bogus hadiths. If this is what the Prophet said, if this is what the Prophet ﷺ instructed us to do, then obviously that's going to have a direct effect on my what? Or my day-to-day worship, or how I what? Eat, sleep, dress, buy, sell, i.e. or my what? Or my tarbiyah. So a pinnacle, crucial point is that before you can build, you have to remove that which is bad. You have to get rid of it. You get a cut. You go to the doctors. Do they stitch up your cut first? Do they heal you? Do they put skin glue on your finger or your hand? What do they do first? How many times do they wash up the Qawi? They make sure it's thoroughly what? Clean. Then they seal you up and allow the body to do what? Heal. And that is the exact concept of Tasfiya and Tarbiyah. And the third principle, to purge, to cultivate, and most importantly, time. The people, they need time to heal, they need time to grow, but they can't heal and they can't grow upon infection. Everybody understand this? And if they grow and they heal upon infection, then what happened in the Middle East, what happened 300 years ago, 500 years ago, is going to what? Happen again. Let's look at it from a different aspect now. When you go to work, you meet people, you mix with people that are very different than you. Regardless whether they're Muslim or non-Muslim, Arab, non-Arab, Pakistani, Indian, Bangladeshi, West African, you mix with different people. This is the masjid that I go to. This is where I take my knowledge from. These are the people that I listen to. This is where I benefit. But I drive a cab, I work at the airport. How many different ideologies do I what? Come across. So it's time to make the salah in the airport. It's time to pray in the airplane. It's time to do this in the office. Holiday seasons, saying greetings to the non-Muslim co-workers. You'll find 5 Muslims and they can't agree on the color of grass. Everybody understand this? Why can't they agree on the color of grass? Because of what? He believes that it's okay to shake a woman's hand. He believes it's haram to shake a woman's hand. He believes that it's mandatory to shake a woman's hand. And most of the issues of difference of opinion among the Muslims goes back to what? Hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Everybody understand this? So it's a very important topic here with regards to you cannot build upon that which is incorrect. You need time once you have established that which is correct. You need time for the cut to do what? To heal. But it can't heal with what? With infection. The broken arm, the first thing that you have to do is what? Straighten it, wrap it up. Then it needs what? Time. The doctor says you have to rest for 6 weeks. It needs time. The Tasfiya was done. What was the Tasfiya, Abdul Hadi? With the broken arm, what was the Tasfiya? Resetting the bone, ascent. Fixing the crookedness. Then what was the Tarbiyah? Put in a cast, ascent. The last and final step is what? Time. It can't be something that's what? That's rushed. But if you fail to make a thorough Tasfiya, if the bone is still a little unsettled, unset, a little crooked, you give Tarbiyah, you wrap it up, you give enough time, what's going to happen to the arm, Abdul Hadi? Everybody understand this? It's going to be permanently damaged. It's going to be what? Permanently damaged. And the same applies to Islam. When we don't have the proper Tasfiya, we rush, hasten into Tarbiyah, or we don't have enough time. Threefold. Tasfiya, Tarbiyah, and what? Time. Everybody understand this? So the first scenario is we never got rid of that which was weak and bogus from day one. Everybody clear on this or not? So we're going to continue to practice that which may be what? Incorrect. Or the second scenario is we got rid of that which was weak and bogus. We made Tasfiya, but we didn't make what? Tarbiyah. We never sat down and opened up Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. We never took the classes for the beginners. We never studied in progressive steps for the simple, average 9 to 5 Muslims and the intermediate students and the advanced students. Or, last but not least, we did the first 2 steps, but we what, Abdul Hadi? We rushed it. It's supposed to change in what? 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. It needs what? Time. Everybody understand this or not? Shaykh Al-Albani rahimahullah, he then says, وَهَذَا أَمْرٌ خَطِيرٌ يخشى عليهم جميعا أن يدخلوا بسببه تحت وعيد قوله صلى الله عليه وسلم من كذب عليه متعمدا فليتبوأ مقعده من النار. He says, and this is very dangerous, and it's even more dangerous than Tasfiya and Tarbiyah. It's dangerous for your soul, and that is if you narrate that which is weak and inauthentic and bogus, you may be included in the Prophet ﷺ statement, man, he says, he who says something about me, he who lies on me intentionally, should take a seat in the fire of hell. That's the famous version of hadith that most of us know about. But there's another authentic version of this hadith that says, "Man qala alayya ma lam aqulhu." He who quotes me and that which I never said should take his seat in the fire of hell. I.e., the Prophet ﷺ in this version, he didn't mention what? What didn't he mention, Abdul Hadi? No, lying, hell and the snow is the same. He didn't mention something else, which is what? Muta'ammidan. Lam yadhkur ish? At-ta'ammud. He never mentioned intentionally. Now one may say, how is this? This is unfair. How is Allah going to punish someone and he made a mistake about the Prophet ﷺ? He didn't intend to lie. He didn't mean to mislead the Muslims. He made a mistake. Allah is most merciful. Allah never oppresses or wrongs anyone. So how can this be? We say is that if you go fishing, and you know in this pool or this pond or this river, there's an assortment of fish. All types of different fish. Edible fish, fish that are poisonous, fish that are detrimental to the human body. You know, the sign is clearly there. All types of fish live in this body of water. So you casually take your fishing around and you do what? You throw it in. Then something starts tugging on your line and you do what? You reel it in. You put it on the deck. Then you throw it back. You reel it in. You throw it back. You started at 2 p.m. You stop fishing at 6 p.m. You have a good amount of fish. Then it's time to scale the fish, gut the fish, clean the fish, fillet the fish, and cut the fish and eat it up. And then you get sick. And someone on a fishing trip, the boat, he dies or becomes terminally ill. The doctor says, who fed this person this fish? It's full of poison. It's full of mercury. It's full of this. It's full of that. Who was the captain of the ship? Who took him to fish for these fish like this? He says, I did. And he says, you should be sued, you should be arrested, you should be locked up. You killed this person, you took his life. What are you going to say, Abdul Hadi? You going to say what? What's the captain going to say? That's not what he's going to say. He's going to say, I didn't do it. What you mean? I didn't try to kill nobody. It was a fishing trip. I didn't mean to harm anyone. Is he at fault or not at fault? How is he at fault? And it was an accident. But Allah says that He won't punish us if we do something by accident. إِن نَسِينَا أَوْ أَخْطَأْنَا. How is he at fault? How is the fisherman at fault? And he didn't do it intentionally. He wanted to feed his brother fish, fresh fish, halal.
Not having the knowledge of what fish would permissible for him to eat.
So he has to be a scholar of the fish. It's a fish. Why is he at fault? He's at fault, and it's a clear reason why he's at fault. It's because he didn't take the necessary what? Precaution, even though he knew that every fish wasn't what? Edible. So it goes back to what we mentioned in the beginning of the talk. Any great man, any great woman, history teaches us is that these people will be what? Lied upon. Intentionally always? Unintentionally. Is Muhammad a great man? Everyone will agree. The Muslim and the non-Muslim. So Muhammad was a very influential man. Was he a prophet? Was he a messenger? Muslims, Christians, Jews, atheists, that's a different topic of discussion. But you cannot deny his place in what? The books of what? History. So if Muhammad is a great man, he's going to have followers, admirers, and he's also going to have what? Enemies, haters, adversaries. Someone, his follower, his friend, his enemy, his adversary, eventually is going to do what against him? Lie. They're going to say an inaccuracy. So you know that everything that is attributed to Muhammad isn't what? True. So you quote, you read, you pass on, you blog, you Facebook, and then you fall into a lie against the Prophet. At the end of the day, it is as if you did it what? Intentionally, because you fished and you knew that all of the fish weren't what? Weren't good. Not even edible. No, poisonous. You knew that. The sign was what? Clear as day. Everybody understand the point or not? So when you quote something, you pass on something without verifying the information, you're at fault. Just as if you did it what? Intentionally. Everybody understand this or not? Because Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is a what? A major historical figure. He's a major what? Historical figure. And people, because of the love of someone, sometimes they exaggerate. And they become sloppy and they become loose in what they say about this major what? Historical figure. How many stories you heard about George Washington, the first president of the United States, the leader of the American Revolution? And you read the books and they'll tell you that George Washington never what? Never cut down his cherry tree. And he never did this and never said this. But the people, because they love what? They love George Washington so what? So much. He was so influential, they end up making a mistake against him. Everybody understand this or not? So this is extremely dangerous. Not only for Tasfiya and Tarbiyah, which is the theme of the talk, but it's extremely dangerous upon your what? Your soul. And it may be a means of you going to the fire of hell for being sloppy in that which you read, that which you quote, that which you pass on without getting the necessary information. And if you yourself cannot get the necessary information or learn the necessary information, then it's upon you to ask those what? Who know, the experts. Everybody understand this? Shaykh rahimahullah ta'ala, he then says, فإنهم إن لم يتعمدوا الكذب مباشرة فقد ارتكبوه تبعا لنقلهم الأحاديث التي يقفون عليها جميعا وهم يعلمون أن فيها ما هو ضعيف وما هو مكذوب قطعا. قال الإمام ابن حبان رحمه الله في صحيحه فصل ذكر إيجاب دخول النار لمن نسب الشيء إلى المصطفى وهو غير عالم بصحته. ثم ساق بسنده عن أبي هريرة مرفوعا من قال علي ما لم أقل فليتبوأ مقعده من النار. فتبين مما أوردناه أنه لا يجوز نشر الأحاديث وروايتها دون تثبت من صحتها وأن من فعل ذلك فهو حسبه من الكذب على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. The Shaykh, he says, these individuals, regardless of their status, imams, scholars, leaders, average Muslim co-worker, anyone, he says, even if they don't intentionally lie on the Prophet ﷺ, the consequence is that they're going to what? Lie on the Prophet ﷺ. And that is because they come across hadiths, they read hadiths, They hear hadith in school, in the madrasa, in my country, where I'm from, and they know that every hadith isn't what? Authentic. Yet and still it does not stop them from passing it on. No. At work, him imposing it on you. It's haram for you to pray in your shoes, akhi. You can't pray in your shoes. It's haram for you to say this. You can't eat this. You can't drink this. Because of this statement, this fable, that it's supposed to be a what? A hadith. Passing it on is one thing. Relaying it is one thing. Mentioning the khutbah is what? Is one thing. You impose the Muslims to do these things, that's another what? That's another level. That's another what? That's another level. He says, so these people at the end of the day, they've lied on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Abdul Hadi, you said that it's snowing outside. Ja'far, you said that it's hailing outside. The weather outside is neither of the two. So in my book, you're both what? Liars. Intentionally or unintentionally. At the end of the day, you told me something that's totally what? Doesn't exist. Everybody understand this? He then quotes Ibn Hibban, rahimahullah ta'ala, who's from the ulama of the 4th century. He says that those, he says in his book, At-Taqasim al-Anwa', he says those who mention something to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they attribute something to him and they know or they don't know that it's authentic, he says they will go to the fire of hell. And he quoted the previous hadith that we just read to you, that most Muslims don't know about. They only know about the hadith that says, he who lies on me what? Intentionally. And they don't know about the other narration that says what? He who says something about me which I didn't say. We got this or not, ikhwan? Everybody understand this? Everybody clear on this or not? The Muslim, each and every single Muslim, 9 to 5 Muslim, is to know the basics of the sciences of Islam. The basics. The rudimentary principles. The basics of how the Quran was sent down. How the Quran was compiled into a book. How the Quran was memorized. Every Muslim in general is supposed to have enough knowledge, enough basic cognizance to know that there's a mode of recitation. Everybody understand this? Is every Muslim going to be a scholar of tafsir? No. Should every Muslim be a scholar of tafsir? Should we even encourage that? No. But every Muslim should know what? Fundamentals. Every single Muslim should know the fundamentals of the sciences of what? Hadith. There is a thing called hadith. It means this. It means that. There are types. There are books. What does this hadith mean? I don't know. I work 12 hours a day. But I know the what, Abu Sa'id? The basics. Everybody understand this? And if you don't know the basics, or even if you do know the basics, have enough humility and respect for yourself. Forget others. For your own self, not to speak about that which what? You don't know about. Everybody understand this or not? Now let's put this on pause for a second. The kalam of Shaykh al-Albani rahimahullah ta'ala. We have much, much more. Abu Sa'id, when we talk about hadith which is weak, and we talk about a hadith which is inauthentic, which is bogus, can we truly understand this if we don't know the opposite? I.e., if we don't know the basics of what makes a hadith authentic, we don't know the basics of what determines a hadith to be genuine, how can we know that which is what? False and made up. You agree on that or not? You agree on this, Salih? Make sense? And this is a worldwide problem among many of us today. Before you get into what is haram, before you get into what is bid'ah, before you get into what is incorrect, what's misguided, who's misguided, you yourself have to know what? The what? The opposite. And oftentimes, you knowing the truth will suffice you from you learning about the falsehood. Not all of the time we said, but we said what? Oftentimes. Let's make an example of this. Was salah, Abu Abdurrahman. Salah, right? Is it a fact that people make salah incorrectly? Would you agree to that? That some people make what? They mean they have bad intentions, right? They don't want to worship Allah. They may have intentions better than you. They may love Allah more than you. But the salah that they make, parts of it, some of it is what? Incorrect. Right or wrong? Sahih? Tayyib. So, a person, he spends his time learning the bid'ah of the salah, the invalidators of salah, the incorrect way of making a salah, the wrong way of making a salah, the cultural practice of the what? Of the salah. Once he learns and studies and masters that, can he make salah correctly? Can he pray correctly? Yes or no? We agree on this or we differ? Can he pray correctly? He says, I know that when you pray, you shouldn't necessarily raise your hands like this. I know that. He says, I know that when you pray, you shouldn't necessarily put your hands to the side. He says, I know when you pray, you shouldn't turn around and look up into the sky. I know that. And so on and so on and so on and so forth, which is correct. Does that mean he now knows how to pray correctly? No, it doesn't. Now let's flip the mirror on the opposite side. A person learned from the authentic sources that Muhammad raised his hands like this, he placed his hands like that, he faced the Qibla like this, he looked at this part, he did this, so on and so from the authentic sources, and he never learns anything which is wrong and incorrect. Can this person pray correctly or not? Everybody understand this? So oftentimes learning the truth suffices you from what? Everybody understand this or not? Does that mean that you never ever learn about the falsehood? No, it doesn't mean that. Does that mean that you never learn that which is incorrect to avoid it? It doesn't what? Doesn't mean that. But it means oftentimes limited knowledge, limited time, limited resources. You learn that which is the haqq, and you don't have to busy yourself with that which is what? Everybody got this or not? This principle, I cannot explain in words how beneficial it is to the layman Muslim. To the layman Muslim. Is that if it isn't the truth, then it has to be what? Falsehood. Everybody understand this or not? But if it isn't the falsehood, it doesn't necessarily have, you don't know what's the what? What's the truth. And this is why many of the ulama of Islam, when they wrote their books refuting falsehood, whatever type of falsehood it was, let's say Aqidah, the Aqidah of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah. You read Sahih al-Bukhari, and you read Kitab al-Tawheed, which Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah wrote for a specific intention. Kitab al-Tawheed, the last chapter of Sahih al-Bukhari, he wrote it for a specific way. And it's not just like any other chapter in his book. He had a specific intention by putting that part in his Sahih. He wrote that book for a specific reason and for specific people. And when you read that book, do you find in that book chapters in which he says the refutation of those who say that the Quran is created, the refutation of those who say that this and that and so on and so on and so on and so forth? You may not necessarily find that, but you're definitely going to find what? The affirmation of what? Allah's kalam. The affirmation of the Quran being the kalam of Allah. You're going to find him doing the method called a taqreer. He doesn't deal with the refutation directly. He just does what? Establishes the haqq from the authentic sources. And that proves indirectly to the smart person is that the room isn't big enough for two people. The seat isn't big enough for what? For two people. This seat is only made for what? I've clearly sat one person down in this seat, and that's the haqq, what the proofs and evidence is. To show you and to direct you is that there isn't enough room for what? A second person. Everybody understand this? Is that when you learn the authentic hadiths, the authentic practice of Islam, that suffices you from what? Dealing with the what? The batil. Everybody got this or not? The principle? Now, does this mean absolutely we never learn that which is wrong? Doesn't mean that. So no one quote that. No one what? No one say that. But limited time, limited resource, and most importantly, limited ability to comprehend and understand. I'm a layman Muslim. I don't speak the Arabic language. My life is short. Everybody understand this or not? So this is crucially important when it comes to Tasfiya and Tarbiyah. Learn that which is correct. Learn that which is sound. Learn that which is valid. And that will force you not to have time and space for that which is what? Batil. And the average Muslim who knows these weak and bogus hadiths, when he sits down and he hears them, he's going to be shocked. Wow, I never even knew that existed. Because he never ever took the time, nor was he ever spoon-fed the what? The authentic what? Everybody got this or not? Khairan inshallah. Moving forward. Another very important point is, just as dangerous and oftentimes more dangerous than the weak and bogus hadiths are the authentic hadiths that we don't have the proper understanding of. We don't have the proper fiqh and fahm of these hadiths. Why is this as dangerous? Or how could you say it could be more dangerous? How can authentic hadith be more dangerous than a bogus hadith? Because the bogus hadith, as many of the pious predecessors would say, they would say that there are some hadiths, inna min al-hadith, he says there's some hadiths that have a light, like the light of the day. And there's some hadiths upon which is a darkness, like the darkness of the night. I.e., when you hear it, when you see it, you automatically what? Yeah, subhanallah. And the hadiths that you see and you hear and you read, you say, what? See the face you just made? You say, what? The Prophet ain't say that. And it may be an authentic hadith, but it sounds so weird and peculiar to you, your fitrah doesn't what? Accept it. However, when I say Sahih al-Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, Abu Dawood is authentic hadith, but the understanding and the interpretation is 101% absolutely what? Ra'san ala aqib. It's 100% what? Topsy-turvy. What's more dangerous now? A bottle of cyanide or a bottle of honey in which there's what? Cyanide. What you want to pick up? Which one are you going to eat? Which one are you going to drink if you had to? You're going to grab the honey for sure. You're definitely not going to touch the what? So the weak bogus hadith oftentimes are clearly weak and bogus, which they are dangerous because they become spread. But now I said Bukhari, and my understanding of it is totally wrong and incorrect. And then I'm aggressive and I impose it and I force it. Now it becomes what? More dangerous. Everybody understand this or not? It becomes more what? More dangerous. Everybody clear on this or not? We can agree on this, Ikhwan, or not? Abdul Hadi. Make sense? Khairan inshallah. Tayyib. With that being said, what's the ruling on repeating after Mu'adhin, Omar? It's obligatory. Sheikh Mustafa, Sheikh Anwar, do you have to listen? You have to repeat? So I'm sinning right now. I'm sinning right now? Yes. I'm not sinning. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. لا إله إلا الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. طيب, brothers and sisters, obviously we're running very short on time. What's important is that weak hadiths, when it comes to Tasfiya and Tarbiyah, we didn't get into weak opinions, and I think that what I've mentioned of the hadith will show you and point in that direction, because the opinion is oftentimes based off of the trust your instincts. Answer the question if you feel that's the right answer. Everybody understand this? What's important is, when it comes to shirk, when it comes to major shirk, minor shirk, a statement that leads to major shirk, when it comes to bid'ah, innovation, that leads to shirk, when it comes to mistreatment of women, disrespect of women, when it comes to all types of bogus practices with regards to the worldly life, with regards to wealth and money, with regards to infrastructure, with regards to unity, and the list goes forward of the effects of bogus narrations, and how if we have these bogus narrations on our table, the table is automatically cluttered, and if the table is cluttered, then it cannot be organized. Everybody understand this? So that's the first half of the Tasfiya. Clear on this? Let alone Tarbiyah. We keep teaching our children the same things, the same bogus narrations, whether it's a made-up hadith or whether it's an authentic hadith with a totally wrong interpretation. That is going to clearly stunt us at best, let alone prevent and stifle our progression as Muslims in the United States. Everybody understand this? Neither of the two has less importance of the other. The bogus narrations, which most of the people of the Sunnah, walillahi alhamd, because of the efforts of people like Shaykh al-Albani rahimahullah and many other of the ulama, the weak and the bogus narrations are not really going to fly. They're not going to really go about. The people have been trained and taught to ask. The people have been trained and taught to verify. The people have been trained and taught to do what? To have a basic understanding of Sahih al-Bukhari, of summarized Sahih al-Bukhari, and so on and so forth. But what I feel is the most dangerous silent cancer is the authentic narrations which are misunderstood. The authentic reports of the Prophet ﷺ in which you don't have the proper understanding and the proper practice. And the final blow is the aggressiveness. This is what I've been taught. This is what I understand. That's one thing, which is bad. But now I'm going to do what? Force it on you. Your turban is too long. Let me see your turban. Let me see. It's too long. You have to cut it. You have to trim it. Because of the hadith that says, Al-isbalu fi thalathatin. Isbal is in three things. Isbal is in three things. Al-izar, wal-qamis, wal-imama. Hadith says that isbal is in three things. One's izar, the bottom. One's qamis, one's clothes. This is haram. My sleeve goes past my wrist. And the imama, the turban. Is hadith sahih? Is it daif? There's two ways that we can go. Clear fork in the road. Those of the ulama who say that it is authentic, what's the proper interpretation? What's meant by isbal of an imama? It can't be between your neck or dragging past your neck. The interpretation. Now I'm going to do what now? I want to force it on you. Trim your imama, ya akhi. Ittaqillah. Trim it, cut it, get rid of it. It's too long. It's haram. Everybody clear on this? Or starting that the hadith about isbal in three things is not even what? Authentic. Everybody understand the danger? And perhaps among the people of the sunnah who have been taught certain things and given certain things, the authentic narrations with the totally incorrect interpretation and the aggressive imposing is more dangerous, because the people are willing to listen, to accept, pass on, and force others. At the end of the day, it's not what Muhammad ﷺ said. At the end of the day, it's what Muhammad ﷺ said, but he did not intend at all. Qat'an. Everybody clear on this? And they're both just as equally as what? Dangerous. Khairan, inshallah. What's important is a topic like this, we can't tackle in 40 minutes or 45 minutes or even an hour for several reasons. One, because time is limited. Second, because we have a mixed audience. Certain brothers have studied certain things. Certain brothers are just here for the fa'idah, just to see their brothers, to enjoy the brotherhood. Certain people are in the middle, and the list goes forward. Some brothers have short attention spans. Some brothers have what? Strong attention spans in which to participate, and the list goes forward. Hopefully, if I leave this masjid today and I go back to New York City, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, I feel and I hope that I achieved my goal and I was successful in doing one thing and one thing only. And that wasn't to teach you everything on a topic, everything on a subject, or to explain everything, but it was to do what? Pour a little bit. I've given you the formula. I've opened your eyes up, awakened you. Inshallah, it's your job. Faddal. Bismillah. Wali, faddal. Bismillah. You gotta take it now. It's obligatory. I've done what, Sheikh Anwar? The rest of the information and the proper sources for the layman, for the student, they're clearly what? Available and easily accessible or easily accessed. I've done my job by giving you what? A small piece, Abdul Hadi. The rest you have to do what? You have to get yourself. Bidnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And nothing good comes for free. Nothing what? Nothing good comes for free in life. If you don't work for a thing at all, know for sure that there's no good in it. Last but not least, I believe we have the Q&A panel, so we're not gonna take no questions right now, right, Sheikh? This is a question about the clarification of the lecture. It says, can you please make the distinction between those who unintentionally lie on the messenger and the scholar who may make a mistake? Tell you. We say that someone who unintentionally lies on the Prophet ﷺ and a scholar who makes a mistake, sometimes they can be the same. Because a scholar can make a mistake regarding a statement of Muhammad or regarding a statement that is attributed to Muhammad. Everybody understand this? Everybody got this or not? So that's first and foremost. Sometimes they're the exact same. Other times, a scholar can make an error on a fiqh ruling. What's the ruling on drinking coffee? What's that, coffee or hot chocolate in your cup? Coffee. Is it permissible to drink coffee out of a cup that has evergreen trees on it? Christmas holiday spirit on it. Is it permissible or not? So the scholar, he says it's haram. And then after he researches it and he figures it out, he finds out that he was wrong. Whether he pondered on it, he thought about it, or another scholar or another student came to him and gave him the information. He says, I was wrong. Everybody understand? It has nothing to do with hadith. He made an error. If he was qualified to make that judgment, to attempt to make the judgment, then his sin is forgiven. His sin is forgiven and he gets a reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. However, the mistake that he made, and this is crucially important, brothers and sisters, crucially important, akhi kareem, the mistake of a scholar or a student of knowledge that was made remains a what? It remains a what? How can it be a mistake? Allah forgave him. He's a scholar. Allah forgave him. He didn't have a bad intention. The difference between the two. His soul with Allah Azza wa Jal, he was qualified and he was sincere. His mistake is what? His mistake is what? Forgiven. He's not held accountable for it. He gets a what? But the statement that he made about the coffee cup remains as a what? Khata. And it's haram for it to be, no, it's not. Abadan. And that's a wide misconception that people have today. Because of the virtue and the status of a person, that it doesn't, what he said, it can't be erroneous. That's very extremely harmful. Everybody understand this or not? The Arabs, they have a famous statement. I'm sure some of you brothers can say it better than I can. They says, Inna li kulli jawadin kabwa, bel kabawat. They says, every thoroughbred horse misses a gallop. Every race horse misses a what? Bel kabawat. They say what? Gallops. And the horse is a what? An old lame horse? A mutt horse is a what? It's a thoroughbred. It's a racehorse. Everybody understand this? So what I said about the coffee cup, me and Allah, it's one thing. If I said about the coffee cup it was wrong, then that remains what? A mistake. Everybody turn this? Abdullah bin Amr ibn As, he narrated this from the Prophet ﷺ, and hadith is clearly thabit fi sahih. إذا حكم الحاكم فاجتهد فأصاب فله أجران وإذا حكم الحاكم فأخطأ فله أجر واحد وخطأه مغفور أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام. So therefore, a scholar or anyone else can say something about the Prophet ﷺ and make a mistake unintentionally. A scholar can make ijtihad and that ijtihad can be mistaken. A normal person can make ijtihad. And there are details of who can and cannot perform the act of al-ijtihad. What's important is there are levels of ijtihad. There are times and places in which certain people have to, and there are times and places where certain people cannot make ijtihad if you're not qualified. Rather, even if you're qualified, there are times in which it's haram to make ijtihad. As the scholars of Islam say, إذا ورد النص إذا ورد الأثر بطل النظر الاجتهاد إذا ورد النص. It says when there's text, then there's no thinking. When there's proof and evidence, there's no ijtihad. And what's meant by thinking is not understanding the proof, but you putting your what? I think it's haram to drink out of that coffee cup. I think it's haram. That's what I feel. And there's a hadith that says that it's permissible to drink out of any vessel that you want. Nothing. There's no ijtihad when there's what? Text. Everybody understand this? Shaykh Islam Taymi would say, al-ijtihadu fi nas la ma'an nas. He says, work hard in understanding the text and never work hard with the text. Everybody clear on this or not? And Allah knows best. I don't know if we're going to make the comment now or any other questions. I don't know the program. Or we'll make the comment now and then we'll save the questions for the Q&A, inshallah. Fadal.
Before we come, I just sent this message our beloved brother who post has compiled a book of 30 hadith of the Prophet called 30 Hadith for Beginners, which is this book right here. I'm gonna get to that. One second. Along with benefits and questions and answers. Very beneficial for Islamic schools, homeschooling, and reading in the masjid. Also for the diligent Hadith disciples, for those who study the book with the author, when the post can receive a certificate of completion. Those who memorize the Hadith can receive an ijazah. The books are available here at the bookstore in this masjid through Hadith Disciple or Sheikh Farouk Post. The book is $10 a piece, or you can buy a box of books for $500 for the masjid and Islamic schools here. I think a portion of it is going to go to the masjid here. From the sale, I think my brother Umar gave me this book. However, I'm going to buy some books anyway to support the brothers. So, brothers and sisters, buy the book. The book is here. It's available. 30 hadith. You want to ijazah in it. Study with the shaykh and memorize them, and then you can teach it. So brothers can make wudu and get ready for the salah.
What's important is, brothers and sisters, is that Allah Azza wa Jalla has provided us with many blessings and opportunities. Blessings and opportunities that did not exist at a point in time. Blessings and opportunities that did not exist at a point in time. And if we don't take advantage of these blessings and opportunities, not only will we be ungrateful to Allah, but those blessings and opportunities, they will leave and they will never ever come back. Everybody understand this? Not only will we fall into not being grateful to Allah, but those blessings and those opportunities will never ever come back. Earlier today, before the program started up, we were sitting in the office, the library. It was me, Nafis, Abu Muslima, a few of my kids were running in and out. Abu Muhammad, Sheikh Habib, he was coming in and out with his chef hat on. And we were sitting around and we were talking. We were eating and we were talking. He had like a brunch. He had fish, he had potatoes, Peruvian, purple potatoes, mashallah. Exquisite food, may Allah reward you. I mean, so we're sitting around and just talking. So it's not really like a, a serious type of, it's just a formal, in a formal conversation talking. So different stories and different experiences that we were talking about. Most likely Abu Muslim was sharing with me, and being much older than me and ahead of me, more experienced than me. And it was very sad when we talk about with regards to the program or some of the brothers and some of the things that go on. It was very disturbing. And he said, when I came home from Saudi Arabia, there was no such thing as this. When I was in Medina, there was no such thing as that. When I came to New Jersey, this thing was totally unheard of. You couldn't do it. It was in space. And now the people today, they have the opportunity. It's easy, it's this, it's free, it's accessible, it's cheap, and they still don't do it. And I said to him, what this reminds me of is the history of our country. And that's the history of Southern slavery. It was a well-known practice that anyone that was a slave wasn't allowed to read. And any slave that was caught reading or being taught to read or writing was severely punished for obvious reasons. For obvious reasons. Ignorance leads to control. Knowledge means power. If someone is ignorant and stupid and foolish, then you can control them. You can steer them around like a sheep. There's of no value to the human being if he doesn't have knowledge. And that's why Allah Azza wa Jal, the first thing that he sent down upon the Prophet ﷺ was not about Tawheed. It was not about La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. It was not about Aqidah. It was not about Jihad. It was not about the orphans. The very first thing that the Prophet ﷺ received had nothing to do with none of these principles of Islam. The first thing that Allah told Muhammad was to do what? Read. Allahu Akbar. The importance of knowledge in general and the importance of reading. So I said, how many people today killed and all types of things done to them for them trying to do what? Read. When they couldn't read, they wanted to read. When they can read, they what? They don't want to read. And that's what reminded me of many issues of da'wah today. Things that were unavailable then, the people begged for and they cried for. It's available now, it's open, it's accessible to people what? And there wasn't no brothers and sisters that were making books, compiling books of hadith, explanations of hadith, going overseas, traveling, studying, learning, so on and so forth. When I was in Medina, before I left in Medina, some of the older brothers there, specifically, it was Dr. Tahir, Allah bless him, he said to the younger brothers we were giving a class to, he says, when I was in school, he says there was no such thing as a master's. There was no such thing as a doctoral. If you came from America, it was unheard of, unthought of. You got into the school, you made it out of the language program, alhamdulillah, it's a blessing. You go to the college, you fail, you drop out. Major. You graduate, Ibn Taymiyyah. He said, and this is a true story, he said what? He said going to the master's program and the doctor's program was only for Arabs or Africans. That's it. Somebody that's from Nigeria, Kuwait, Saudi, it was just for them. It was unheard of. Now, what's happened today? How many opportunities do the younger brothers have to study, to benefit, to go further, to do things, and which is open and accessible, and they don't want to what? They don't want to do it. So that's unfortunate, that's sad. So if we don't take advantage of whatever Allah gives us of a blessing, whether it's books of hadith being written by people that speak your language. Listen carefully, guys. This has nothing to do with Farouk, who's a friend of mine, but it has nothing to do with him. Wallahi. The concept of a book that's been translated from someone that speaks a different language. His mother tongue is not English. Someone who translates a book who is not an expert and a specialist in hadith. And someone who writes a book who speaks your mother tongue and is also trained in the sciences of hadith. It's like Allah says in the Quran, it's like shade in the sun. This is uncomparable. So if you don't take advantage of this or any other blessing, forget Farouk Post, any other blessing, you're going to be ungrateful to Allah that you asked for, you begged for 10 years ago. We want knowledge, this, and that, sunnah, hadith, aqidah, and know for sure that the blessing will leave and it will never what? It'll never, ever, ever come back. So that's just food for thought, inshallah ta'ala. Allah knows best.
So we're going to stop here. Then after that, at 6:30, we're going to finish the sentence. We're going to have a Q&A. And then 8 o'clock, extended session for students of knowledge. So 6:30, we will